Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 138 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on July 27th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at the abilities of Osiris. But first, let's run through a quick introduction of those on the show for tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. We also have with us the man who has been said has the voice of a flower, an individual who goes by many names, some not necessarily true, Justin Sane 0516. What guys do you have on for us tonight, Justin?
You can call me Billy Ray Osiris. Just don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart.
Oh my.
I just don't think it'd understand.
And if you break my heart, my achy breaky heart?
No.
You just might mess around and kill this man.
Stop. No.
Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green Eye Music Lover. Green, I hope you're doing well. How's the week treated you so far?
I'm glad it's Friday. It's Friday. It's been a good week. We've had some big announcements as far as like Bungie goes this week, which is always fun and welcome. And I ordered my book 30 seconds after I saw that tweet. Because
I think everyone had a mad dash for it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. But yeah, it's been good. I'm excited for things.
Nice. And rounding out the usual team, we have the grizzly bearded cultivator of Spinfoil himself, someone who has been lovingly been known as the Tigger of the Destiny lore community, the one and only Beard Grizzly. Beard, how are you doing tonight?
One, get a different nickname for me.
I'm working on it.
I'm still broken at the fact that Green has no idea what Studio Ghibli is. Three,
transmuted from one podcast episode to the next at this point.
Well, I mean,
that's just what we're making it easy for. Just to go from like one episode to the next.
No, what's bad is they're coming out in reverse because this episode comes out first before the top three, so they have no idea what's going on.
Well, look, no, that's perfect. You know why? Because we're talking about Osiris tonight. So you know what? You can deal with the Vex timeline.
It's like Beard's. Yeah, it's like Beard's Vex notes. They start 2 pages after they start.
Yeah, I didn't show you that one to actually confirm that, but it's there if you want confirmation. Side note, if you didn't know, in my journal that I have, Volume 1, if you're familiar with the story of the Vex, this will mean absolute significance to you. But my notes for the Vex started on page 229. The problem is that I went back through my journal and I found out that, I had 2 pages that were stuck together. So by technicalities, they would have actually started on page 227 of the book.
Which is significant because...
Did you go back and renumber the whole thing?
I did not. I was tempted to, but I did not.
Why is that significant, Green? Tell us.
Go ahead, Green.
Because I was giving you the...
Oh, well, it's
honor.
significant because of the original story with the Vex that we see with like Maya Sundaresh and everything. 227 copies of each of the members on that team were created. So per that point, it would have been highly ironic had it actually started on page 227.
Yes.
I think you need to write the whole thing over so that it lands on 227.
I am not rewriting any of those books.
I love how it's green. That's just like,
I know how, I've been starting to journal my stuff now.
Do you know how many hand cramps I would go through if I have to go ahead and rewrite that? Like, I'm just going to tell you that now.
It's rough.
But will the actions you take avert the futures you see or cause them?
Well, it could just be moments in time.
Such as the Curse of Foresight. And we move on.
Whatever.
So speaking of that, last week we asked the community if they thought Osiris was a Sun Singer, a Dawnblade, or both. And Green has been busy trying to keep up with all the responses, but I think she has arrived on a final verdict. So what was the consensus of the community on this week's question?
Consensus Osiris, I get it.
Right. Oh, that was an unintended pun.
Good
Was
command
it?
of the subject matter.
Was it?
Did you actually plan that one?
Yes, I did.
Oh. Well,
He never blinked.
golf clap for you.
Nicely done, Justin. Nice.
It was really funny because I thought there would be more of a consensus than there actually was. It kind of depends on which people were around for D1 lore versus which people are around for just D2 lore. Because we actually had a lot of people who were just like, oh no, he is just a Dawnblade. And then people who are pulling out some of the Grimoire that we're going to talk about later, saying, well, he had instances where he did have Sunsinger, because the Thanatonauts, essentially. That's just, I know it's not confirmed as far as...
No. Okay. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah. I know this is going to be part of the topic, but that was one of the things brought up. A more refined version of Sunsinger. There was not really they were all like, okay, yes, he's a Dawnblade now, but they don't know if he was actually a Sunsinger for sure. It was just assumed he was because that was the subclass that was around at that point.
Which is a fair point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of... of course, I get my obligatory... It doesn't matter because he's not Shax answer from Lady Shax. Because all things Shax.
I was about to say, isn't that the answer every week?
Yeah, pretty much. I either get one from her that's saying it doesn't matter because it's not Shax, or the answer is Shax. Or from Bibble, he's my dad. All right, guys. You guys are ornery.
And additionally, just to kind of throw more fuel on the fire here, we had a new lore tab that had actually come out, or is coming out, I should say. So if you don't want a little spoiler on the rekindled and the other gear coming up, the solstice armor is actually giving us some hints that our powers that we receive in Destiny 2 within the first few missions are in no way old, like they're probably older, etc., but they're in no way unique just to us.
Right.
The Sentinel known as Theus 7 was captured by a Cabal was captured by a Cabal skirmish group and so on. And he was able to actually, or at least so it says in the entry, he was a Sentinel. And this would mean that he was able to call in the shield. So per that point, just to stress it, the Sentinels were still something that were available outside of just the Defenders. It seems like there are two different means behind it. So Zavala may just be a straight Defender, and others may be able to utilize those capabilities all the same. But long story short, I honestly think that at least with just that entry, that puts to rest that our abilities are not something that are just like one of those things. And even then, with the newer abilities that we're starting to see that are cropping up, with the way that we're going to be using them in Forsaken, change the ritual, change the outcome.
Yep.
So,
just wanted to throw that out there. So he
No,
very
it's-
well could
it's
have been
good
both
stuff.
for all we know.
right, and yeah, like I said, I might.
We're
Yeah,
gonna get into
you'll
it.
get there, Blue.
I
It's
might
one-
have
it's
notes
one
on
of the
this one.
topics. Yeah.
So as always, we love hearing everyone's feedback on the weekly questions. This week's questions to the community is actually going to be, I'm going to defer completely and 100% to Green. Do we have a question for this week?
Okay, so because he's deferring, because it's on Warframe next week, because we're going to be talking about Warframe with
Oh, we are?
hopefully,
Oh, we
Yes.
are.
hopefully with my name is Life.
Oh
Mhm.
my.
Oh my. And I am terrified to come up with a question of the week, knowing that Bife is going to be on. So I'm really trying to do my research and get a good question put together, but I can tell you it's going to be on the Tennu, specifically about their background, but I haven't formulated how I'm going to do that. So if you know that part of the story in Warframe with the Tenno's background and the ship and everything with the what made the Tennos,
Mm-hmm.
expect a question around that kind of theme. I haven't figured out how to word it yet, but that's gonna be the generalized theme because I want to make sure it's good enough for Bife because it's Bife.
Yeah. I had one.
Yeah.
What's a Warframe?
I'm sure Bife will call you a numpty and then proceed to explain exactly what a Warframe is.
Oh, it's just another vehicle for hurtful remarks aimed at me. I see.
But yeah.
Sorry, Warframe people. I love you.
I'm gonna say
sorry,
there's gonna be a.
Warframe people.
All
I
hate
know.
mail can be directed at Justin Sane 05.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are you
let's
saying
send
that
it all
my
his way.
my attendance
I get
on this cast is 10 UAs at best?
Are we gonna have
okay,
one of
so
those
with that
nights,
one,
guys?
I know everyone here is looking forward to diving into the discussion. So let's run through our standard intro notes and get right
That's
into
probably best.
That was really good. You got it.
In our last episode of Focus Fire Chat, we discussed the Bray family. If you ever miss an episode and would like to catch up, please be sure to check out FocusFireChat.com for archives, articles, and links to the other aspects of Focus Fire Chat. If you don't mind, please rate and, if you can, review the show on iTunes, Podbean, or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful as they not only let us know what we can do better, but help us stay on the charts, which helps others find our amazing community. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a cross-community gathering where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within the lore of Destiny and other games. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday at about 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a high-level summary of the previous week's chat for those who were unable to participate. Please be sure to also give some support to the other podcasts in the Guardian Radio Network, links of which can be found in our show notes on our website. If you are a fan of lore in all its various forms, be sure to also check out thelorenetwork.com, where you can find a wide variety of some amazing content covering a number of different titles and mediums. Our next chat is going to be a discussion on the extra lore topic of July, Warframe. However, as always, please be sure to weigh in on the poll this weekend to let us know which topic you want to discuss after that. Links to that poll can be found on either Twitter at FocusFireChat or within our Discord server. With all this being said, here's Green with a high-level summary of tonight's topic.
Hey guys. I will have to admit that writing an introduction or summary on the topic of Osiris' abilities proved to be a bit more of a challenge than my usual topics. This is not for lack of information, but rather due to the precarious nature of discussing one's abilities. What I mean by this is that a person constantly evolves and adapts to survive in their environment. Abilities, therefore, while similar over time, inevitably reflect the challenges overcome. In other words, while the basic ability might be similar, every individual will have nuanced differences in their own manifestation of any given ability. The question at hand for Osiris is, are his abilities directly tied to his involvement with the Vex, or is he merely more advanced in his warlock ways than ourselves? Discussion on his subclass will also prove to be an interesting topic due to the evolution of our own understanding and perspective throughout this franchise. Osiris is one of the many reminders that the characters that we theorized about throughout D1 are being revealed to us in layers, and that our diligence and willingness to constantly learn will help prevent the enemy, in whatever form they inhabit, from achieving their goal. Ignorance is the enemy of mankind.
Before we jump into the information and thoughts that the community had about the abilities of Osiris, however, let's have a quick chat about this week's Lost Lore.
Are we doing OG prophecies for Lost Lore?
I was actually going to talk about the definition of prophecies. And kind of
okay.
Because so here's the thing is really interesting about this whole thing. There are, let me pull up my notes real quick. There are three main things with regards to Osiris within Destiny, predominantly Destiny 1, but Destiny 2 as well. And those are the prophecies, the lost prophecies, a group of writings called the Fractal Scrolls, and then another group of writings called the Parables of the Offspring. Now, the thing that you have to remember with those last two items are these are predominantly gathered through the exposure to the disciples of Osiris. So it's very difficult to say with any certainty right now that they were actually written by Osiris. Now, they are credited to Osiris. But again, given what we've learned about the disciples in Destiny 2, that kind of puts some questions in place as far as the validity of those claims. However, if you just go on the surface with what we know now, these are supposedly the teachings of Osiris. And the reason why I bring up the tenuous connection there is that one of the big things about prophecies, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but really quick, one of the reasons is prophecies are often challenged as a pseudoscience, and there's a reason for that. But one of the big reasons is a kind of what's called a hindsight bias that happens quite a bit with prophecies, and it's called post-diction. And what this is when a prophecy which was genuinely written or spoken before an event or events, they get reinterpreted after the event, then that in a way that fits the facts of what happened.
Side note, if I may, that's happening right now with me with the, as I've kind of talked with you guys about the new parables that we kind of have that were written on the weapons.
Oh yeah. Actually, I was like actually going to totally bring that up. Yeah, because of our conversation, right? Because here's the thing: is hindsight. You know, we always get that there's everyone always says it kind of passing, and I don't know if people think about it a lot, but hindsight's 20/20, and the reason why is because the challenge of a prophecy. So okay, hang on. Let me back up, and then I'm actually going to come back to that, Beard. So I want to run through a couple really quick definitions and kind of a little bit of history behind three key terms with those pieces of lore. The first one is obviously prophecy. So what is a prophecy? It's something that all known ancient cultures in our world, all ancient cultures had prophets who delivered in some form or fashion prophecies. They delivered these. So a prophecy is simply a prediction. However, such messages also were typically included or involved inspiration, interpretation, or revelation of a divine will concerning the prophet's social world and events to come. So keep that definition in mind while we go through the other ones, because note here that a prophecy is always, when we use the term, a prophecy is always linked to a divine will. There's always a cosmic divine entity linked to the prophecy. The next one that I wanted to talk about real quick was fractal. We actually see this a couple times in the lore. There's one reference in the Legends that deals with the Deepstone Crypt, but they're talking about the actual design of a shadow. This one is the fractal scrolls. And so a fractal is a curve or geometric figure, each part of which has the same statistical character as the whole. The reason why this is interesting is that fractals are useful in modeling structures in which similar patterns reoccur at progressively smaller scales, and in describing partly random or chaotic phenomena such as crystal growth, fluid turbulence, and galaxy formation. An example of a fractal would be the seashell, or a fern, or even the peacock feathers of a male peacock. That's actually considered a fractal. It's basically a never-ending pattern. And these are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales. They are created by repeating a simple process over and over again in an ongoing feedback loop. The golden ratio, for example, is a fractal. However, the Fibonacci sequence is not. While the Fibonacci sequence can create visuals such as the golden spiral, which is considered mostly a fractal, the sequence of numbers within the Fibonacci sequence is actually not a fractal. So to put that into game terms, the fractal scrolls therefore are a similar, or a repeated pattern in which the scrolls are capturing. So it's basically a teaching tool here, is what ultimately is being stated about them. The last one actually is parable, and most people will recognize parables here, but this is going off the parables of the Allspring. Now, note Allspring. There's no definition for Allspring. Allspring is kind of a creation of Bungie and the lore writers within Bungie for this purpose. The best I could tell you is it's an all-spring. It's an eternal spring, whether that is of life, of knowledge, of light, whatever you want on that one. But the parable. A parable is a simple story that is used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. You also see them called allegories, or moral stories or tales. And the reason why parables are really important is because let me continue real quick. Sorry, I kind of get ahead of myself on that one. So a parable is a brief, succinct story in prose or verse that illustrates a moral or religious lesson. It differs from a fable in that fables use animals, plants, inanimate objects, and even forces of nature as characters, while parables generally feature just human characters. Parables are a type of analogy, and the importance here for a parable is that allegorical interpretation, when you're reading for context, is very important. And this kind of goes back to a concept of how to read religious texts, in which the argument is that there's actually 4 different manners. There's a literal, an allegorical, an anagogical, and a moral. And to really quick, just kind of go through those. Literal is, it's literal. It's, you read the words that are being said. The quick example that comes to mind is Genesis. God created the world in 7 days. Okay, if you read that literally, it would mean 7 days. Now, then you run into an allegorical, which is stories with hidden or deeper meanings. And this is where you get the parables. You have again from the not the Old Testament, the New Testament. You have the parable of the prodigal son. Anagogical is the destiny and where we are going. So this is, how does it actually kind of project us into the future? And then moral is usually the way an authentic follower lives or follows the teachings of that particular text. So really quick, the reason why I kind of brought all this stuff up is that we ascribe these prophecies to Osiris. Osiris has his own connotation in his naming convention, and there was a lot of conversation that we've already had about that. So I'm not really going to harp on that particular thing. Though the interesting thing for me that I will kind of expand on is the idea that a prophecy always comes from a divine will. Well, a divine will is a god. Osiris is a god in Egyptian mythology. So you can argue here that the prophecies are being handed down from Osiris directly. And that's a potential kind of reading into the naming semantics of that, or the etymology of that. And another kind of thing here on prophecy is that there are different types of prophecy, and this is going to kind of tie into where I'm going to let Beard kind of talk about a little bit of the post-diction concept. There's ascribed 12 modes of prophecy, and this is actually from a philosopher from Judaism in the 12th century. He wrote this. It's called the Guide for the Perplexed, which is a very aptly apt named text. He wrote this in 1190, and it was translated actually in 1204 into common language for that time. And his name is Maimonides, which is not an easy one for me to say. And his 12 modes of prophecy range from what's called inspired actions, which would, in his text, the example he gives is like Noah and the flood. Noah was inspired to perform actions, but he never actually said any prophecies. He never spoke, divine word. He just did. He built the boat, and there you go. The next level is inspired words. Then you have allegorical dream revelations, which is basically a dream with signs. Auditory dream revelations, which is when you have like a vision within your dream that there isn't signs, it's basically a message. Audiovisual dream revelations from a human speaker. Audiovisual dream revelations from an angelic speaker. And then audiovisual dream revelations from a divine speaker, or basically God at that point. And then next level after that is allegorical waking visions, auditory waking revelations, and then again back into the audiovisual, but this time it's with waking revelations, and that runs the gamut of human, angelic, and divine. So those are for him when he did and basically what he did was in this mode here, these 12 modes, is his way of explaining the different forms of prophecy that occurred within the Old Testament for his faith. And so a lot of times, and this really kind of was, and the reason I bring this up is because this is a very instrumental concept to the idea of prophecy. Pretty much every single intellectual writer after this period, or after him, his work was published in the 1200s, they referenced his modes, regardless of what faith they came from. In a small trivia fact, actually, the Guide for the Perplexed is one of the most sought-after books out from Judaism that for even non-Judaic people, because he approached it from it's kind of the equivalent of like an Aquinas. It was an Aquinas, but that type of book. It was a very accessible book to anybody of any faith. That being said, I want to go back to something within Destiny. So, Beard, I know this is, like I said, this is a conversation we've had quite recently, actually, about the parables. And so the parables are, for those who might not be super familiar with it, parables are it's basically the flavor text, right? It's the flavor text of the weapons that we got given to us in Curse of Osiris. So those weapons that match up the wall, the weapons of challenge, I guess you would call them. They all came with flavor text that was basically 2 lines. And when you put them all together, they kind of introduced a very interesting prophecy, which, you can ascribe to one of Osiris's visions or his lost prophecies. But Beard, I know you probably are better to speak about the post-diction piece of it.
I'm going to say the way that these read, and they kind of gave us a little bit of a hint in I cannot remember now which gun it was, but one of the guns, the lore entry itself gives us like ideas of like what is being talked about within these parables, to say like, well, 1 through 7 seems like, 1 through 7, I think it was, seems like it lines up during the events of the Red War, and don't seem to have any other interpretation to no knowledge. And I started to think about it a little bit further with like newer stuff that we started to have. And I'll read a couple of them at least to kind of give you an example of what I mean. the first one, honestly, with like the Garden Progeny 1, says 2 siblings cleaved by time and space, reflections never found alone, the endings of the eldritch race, a path long seen but never known. Now, part of this falls back to a theory that, of course, Blue and I have been talking about for a good while now, between like Anna and now, as we know, Elsie being the stranger and whatnot, where she was cleaved by time and by space, and then also seemingly going up against either the Vex or the Hive and so on, and like how all of this would fall into place. Now, reading it from this example and what we know of in Warmind, that almost seems like they're the starting point for a good majority of this. So as you take these parables and start to read through them, which I'm going to spare us just because I know time is going to be a factor here with this just being Lost lore, you actually start to find more pieces of this puzzle that say that these parables are actually quoting things that happened even before Destiny 2 started to become highly relevant. And that is something to kind of keep in mind. Like, all of this is going over, or a good majority of these are actually talking about instances that could have happened actually before Destiny 2 even became very or highly relevant with its story, its history, and so on. And even predating some of the events that would have happened in Destiny 1. So Osiris is kind of akin and more up on these pieces a little bit, it seems, or had visions about how they could have all been placed together. And for me, that's just a very important thing to kind of think about, is he's talking about these things, but also mentions in another one of the weapons, as a writer of parables or a writer of prophecy, how much is it that I give to the reader without either giving too much away and then altering the way that they handle themselves or prepare themselves or so on, versus, of course, having too little information that they can then not act on it or even see that what I was talking about was even ever relevant at that point. So those are the balance points that Osiris has to try to fall into, and I find it nice that Bungie's kind of putting it this way, because going back and reading them again, yeah, you start to read a little further into these and figure out, as Black Flag just said, you start to figure out what this Curse of Osiris truly is. This curse of foresight, this ability for him to see what it is that's actually coming down the line, or what it was that had happened previously, and the way that these prophecies and parables are written. He has to figure out a line, this thin line in between, to give us just enough information. And for some people, that just enough information may never even come to light. At that point, for us, we're one of the only ones that I know of within the Destiny universe now that understand that the Exo Stranger is Elsie Bray, because we're one of the only ones that really came into contact with her to a point where we could actually talk with her. And she means a little bit more to our Guardian in particular. So these writings actually hold great significance for us. And it's funny enough in that realm, because of the fact that Osiris actually points to us as being such an important key within the history and what is being written. Because without us, within the Infinite Forest and so on, we wouldn't be able to perform the events that we do, because of the way that that we then influence time and so on with the Vex. We're that element that doesn't necessarily line up with most of it. And we're still trying to figure out the question of, well, why is that? And these parables, I think, still speak to a piece of that as we go along. Now, funny enough, of course, the endings of them, like 8 through 10, I believe, still bring up this question then of how far out, or how much more is it that we've seen some different notions of like what's going to happen with the story as a whole. How far is it into Destiny 3 that some of this could go? How far into it with Forsaken is some of this going to go? And these are questions that are left unanswered, of course, but the more you sit and think about the parables and again the prophecies with what the information is that we have now with Destiny 2 and its expansions at all, is very, it paints this different picture from what we were explained right when they had come out in December. And it definitely, again, is this mystery that opens up to just totally different rights.
Awesome. So, yes, the curse of prophecy is knowing when to talk and when to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was pretty much Lost Lore for me. Was, I think, I just, one of the things that when we talk about Osiris and what he has to say to people, given his abilities, or given the knowledge that he has gained from the Infinite Forest and maybe other sources. Real quick, it was Traveler's Judgment 5 was the one that's the card that kind of speaks to his being on that knife's edge as far as what he can and can't say, or sorry, of what where it comes from. But so, all right, let's I'm gonna kind of just jump into this real quick. So Osiris, for those who are have been under a rock, Osiris is the former Vanguard commander and Warlock mentor, which, yes, those are two separate titles. Keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. Who was exiled due to divisive beliefs and a refusal, basically, to fall in line with the speaker's wishes. He is currently located somewhere within the Infinite Forest, which is located within Mercury.
Some win,
yeah.
No, somewhere, and I'm gonna. I'll explain this in just a second when I get to that, because the Infinite Forest is a lot of things. It is not a time traveling machine. It is a predictive engine, a mathematically predictive engine. It does not actually time travel. You manipulate the equations to see predictive facts of where things are going to be based off certain equations and certain variables, but it actually does not extend into a temporal space. Which, again, I'm going to get to, because that's one of the things that I really am actually curious on. A couple of your guys' thoughts on some of those. But the really big debate that I think everyone still has about Osiris is the whole subclass. Is he a Dawnblade or is he a Sunsinger? And before I get into this, Green kind of made a comment about this in the intro that she did. There's a quote. It's actually now one of my favorite quotes from Destiny, from our good friend Tyra. And it's from the records that we got released before, well, man, it feels like a long time ago, but it's still one of the best quotes. And she says, "This is why Guardians look for fragments of the Golden Age. We are the descendants of a lost civilization. Only by understanding what was can we understand what we are now, how the world we know came to be. And each artifact we find helps us interpret what we already know, adds layers, new identities. We are experimenting in the laboratory of time, testing each observation through a crucible of evidence. Sometimes our conclusions change, and with each shift, we learn more of where we come from. The next shift in our perceptions, it may be on Mars." And this is in regards to her realizing, after a decade of assuming that Charlemagne was in fact a Warmind, that Charlemagne was not a Warmind. Charlemagne was actually a submind of the Warmind, Rasputin. And so, yes, I'm going to double down on the fact that there is only one Warmind. Other than the fact that Bungie has explicitly stated that, Tyra is now in-game explaining why that is. Because everyone assumed it, but when we got new information, it became clearer.
I'm going to say, not that one ghost shell was enough for it, just to make fun of us. That drop that little piece in there too.
Or, well, talking minor little spoilers, Cade 6, not Cade 7, Cade 6. But what's going on in chat? So really quick, it's often been assumed that Osiris has been a Sunsinger. The Warlock is shown in the introductory video of A Curse of Osiris DLC for Destiny 2 to wield the abilities of the Dawnblade. However, is this necessarily a contradiction in the lore versus the presentation due to Destiny 2 from the meta, quote-unquote point of view introducing a new subclass. It should be noted here that nowhere in the grimoire was it ever stated that Osiris was a sun singer. Nowhere. It was reasonably assumed that he was, given the information that was present at the time. And Green kind of touched on this a little bit with the question of the week. So let's kind of look at the evidence. Let's say Osiris as a sun singer. In the Osiris card, we see a mention of Lord Shaxx meeting with fire teams of warlocks who have no shadow and never blink. A lot of different explanations here. One being, hey, he's got reflections that are full of light, full of solar light, and they don't really ever blink.
Wait. So that just repaints that whole scene. He's surrounded just by Osiris at that point. Not different warlocks, just Osiris.
It never says that it's different warlocks. It just says fire team of warlocks.
That just blew my mind, because that's not something I've ever thought of as far as that scene.
But I mean,
it's just kind of creepy.
Oh yeah. But you know what? The reason why is because one of the first times we meet a reflection of Osiris, there are more than one, and they're surrounding us, talking to us, and arguing with Sagira.
Talking to Sagira.
Well, yeah, sorry, yeah, talking to we don't talk.
Talking with her, but just the. So that's one of the examples. The other one, very similar to that, is the one that takes place in Taken King, or like right before Taken King, with Eris, who we think is Osiris, with her and going to speak with the Queen. Eris is blinded by him, can't look at him. What card is that?
Ghost Fragment, the Queen 2.
Oh, you do have that here. Good job, you.
So, and I make a note here. There's a big if here. If we are to assume that Osiris is the unnamed individual in Ghost Fragment, the Queen 2, then Eris's physical inability could be explained by his being in radiance or his immense power and light. However, I also call out here that these assumptions, because that's actually two assumptions there, require a number of theoretical conditions that haven't ever been proven. We don't know if Osiris was the individual there, and we also don't know why Eris looked away.
Can't look at him.
Yeah, I mean, there's two kind of big ifs there. Given the
information, when it seems like that the Queen, Ultra, and so on can look at him no problem.
Right, they had no problem looking at him. Yeah, which
just to spout that difference at least.
Well, and there's that, and I still kind of have a passing thought of Saint 14 was known for immense light. We have guardians out there who are known for immense light, and so if her physical inability to look at that individual was due to the light, then that does not necessarily isolate it to be just Osiris.
If it's the reflections, because the reflections give off light.
Right, but again, going back to what Beard's saying, the Queen and Uldren had no problem looking at him.
We don't have any problem looking at him.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, because it's solar. Yeah. I mean, and my point there is that there's just there requires to be a lot of assumptions to point to that as evidence of Osiris as a sun singer.
So what about Osiris and his dabbling in I can't ever say the word.
Thanatonautics.
Thank you.
So here's the thing. Oh man, where to begin on this rabbit hole? Thanatonautics is simply the ability to study, emphasis here, to study the experience after a guardian's death. It is never stated that the visions that are seen after death are expressly only to Thanatonautics or Thanatonauts. Thanatonauts are just the ones that are obsessed with deciphering those visions.
Correct.
Because here's the first evidence that you have that it's not unique to Thanatonauts. Ghost Fragment XO2.
Yep.
Just one of Justin's favorite cards.
The one with the weird...
the face laser.
Yeah, the
stuff.
Banshee face laser card.
Even though it's not Banshee. It's not Banshee, but...
It sounds like something Banshee would do. Just give me that much.
I will give you that much, but it's not Banshee, but it's been called the Banshee Face Laser card for as long as I can remember. But yeah, it's basically an Exo Guardian who is doing exactly what a Thanatonaut does, but in the card, he specifically states in a way that makes it clear that he is not a Warlock or a Thanatonaut. He says, I'm attempting to do what the Thanatonauts do, and that is to study. So basically what they do is they do what Ikora was kind of getting in trouble for, repeatedly commit suicide. They jump off the shore. That's where the joke on Shores of Time were from.
Which is where the whole idea of Osiris being that word.
Osiris dabbled in Thanatonautics, and we know that from the Osiris card.
Right.
But we also know that he dabbled in pretty much everything. That was Warlock.
Right,
he was
again,
not just
he was a Vanguard mentor, so that makes sense.
No, and here's the thing: is like I'm not arguing about what I'm arguing is the definition of a Thanatonaut is not the unique ability to be a sun singer. You don't have to be a sun singer to be a Thanatonaut.
I mean, for creeps' sake, we've got friggin' ghosts. They're going to be the thing that'll heal us. I point to the Exo Ghost Fragment card, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's using the ghost to bring him back, but he still sees visions. Yep.
And so it does. Thanatonauts are just recording it and then obsessing over the details.
All it does is really proves the point of what the Thanatonautics is all about.
Right.
That's Sliders. All that Exo 2 does.
So,
yep.
Here's a question kind of relating to that. Do we think his prophecies come from that?
So, and this is where I'm going to... oh, man. I want to use that as a segue into my conversation about Infinite Forest, because that is actually along my lines of thought.
We can go back to it later.
Okay, yeah. I want to... So keep that in your mind. Keep that in the back of your mind real quick, because I want to talk about the Dawnblade assumption. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, perfect. So real quick to wrap this little subclass conversation up. Osiris as a Dawnblade. Really simply, we have a literal video of Osiris portraying him using the super ability of the subclass, a Dawnblade. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey, because we don't know when that video happens.
Right.
Was that post Red War, or was that prior to Red War? Because remember, there's it happens in the Infinite Forest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not a win then.
Well, but no, it is, because every Guardian got cut off from the light. And when we regained our light, everyone had access to the ununique... I mean, again, I emphasize back to what Beard was saying with the Sentinel card. You know, everyone had access to, quote-unquote, these new subclasses, or these changed subclasses. We don't know historically, currently, where these subclasses were discovered. If they are unique and new in the true sense of the word, or if they were they're like the Stormcaller, or the Stormcallers and Night Stalkers are primitive subclasses, which actually I would argue that they're more refined, so they're actually newer. But go for it.
Another really important piece to remember, Osiris didn't have Sagira. He was pretty well out of light to begin with, because we've seen with Tevis, you do lose your light after a while.
Yeah.
So that point, it seemed like Sagira was underneath for how long in the sand.
Right.
He was utilizing different powers we're not sure how far disconnected that was. Right. So there's a lot of time and when that still needs to be put in place, and how much of the Infinite Forest power Osiris was actually tapping into to utilize himself versus having light. Because that's the largest thing that still has never been explained, is if Osiris was affected by the Traveler being cut off while he was in the Infinite Forest.
Black Flag makes a good point as well. He says that it likely takes place after the post-war, when Sagira gets shot, because the Traveler awakening is what led to the possibility of the Dark Future. or at least one of the possibilities.
The dark future
No,
seems like it was
no.
going to happen no matter what.
The dark.
But
I understand
the
what.
Traveler Awakening is
No,
what helps kick off Curse of Osiris. There's one voice line in one of the missions that talks about that.
Yes, but
it's the catalyst. It's catalyst, but they were predicting the dark future because that's the convergence. That's the end. That's the end that they're all working towards.
I'm just going to read off Future Safe, quite frankly, because Future Safe 10 tells us that it is only one path to the ending of it all.
Oh, hang on, Beard. What does the text say?
Okay, let me get that, because I think that kind of
I totally see what you're saying, but
end.
I kind of always interpreted it as the Traveler was the kickstart. Yes, yeah. It was totally the cause, but that doesn't mean that they weren't already building predictability. I mean, it's in a reality machine. They
were in the Vault of Glass again, but we don't know when. Essentially.
Well, they could have also been in a reality
hang on.
format of the Vault of Glass.
Wait. Okay, which conversation thread are we on right now? The Vault of Glass. The Vault of Glass was the presentation. So the Vault of Glass was the presentation of Osiris as a Dawnblade. That's it.
Right.
There was no dark future in that Vault of Glass.
No, but if Segura is shot, because at the same time, and that's what they're investigating at that point.
Well, okay, so real quick.
Segura comes, she gets revived, and that's one of the first things she talks about is that the Traveler Awakening, because she knows about that already.
Well, she doesn't necessarily know about it because Osiris doesn't tell her about it. She's just basically sent out from the forest, shot, and then she's like, Osiris is in big trouble. I don't know why, but Osiris is in big trouble.
Yeah, I don't remember Segura making a comment about... Hang on, I'm going to have to... I don't remember that particular line, is all I'm saying.
We didn't know until we were... Because I just got done replaying all the missions because I was helping somebody out, but we don't hear any notion of Segura knowing until we actually meet up with Osiris again. And then we start going down the path of trying to figure out Panoptes and so on. So for that angle, I would really say that no, there's no relation to it.
I'm curious.
And Justin, I know that you want to say something. I do want to read Future Safe 10.
You go right ahead,
to get that done on that angle. But this says, a fragment from Osiris. First word's cut off, but ought been easy to gather this foresight. Prophecies are tricky things. They change the future, they foretell. When a seer shares their knowledge of a coming event... oh no, this is actually the one I was thinking. It's Segura's shell, actually, I think is the one that I'm thinking of.
Okay, while you look up real quick.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. All right, go ahead.
So real quick, what Black Flag and Green are saying, I completely see what you're saying. This is in the Gateway. There is a quote or a voiceover by Akora that says, when the Red Legion attacked, it cost us almost everything, blah, 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 the awakening of it. And then it jumps to the Infinite Forest. My point is, I can totally see where, this might be, you guys might be correct. This might be a clear indication that this event that we are jumping into is happening after that. But my point is there's nowhere in the show right here, and I didn't even think about this, so you guys are, actually seeing something different than I was seeing. I was seeing this as a flashback to Segura and Osiris in the Infinite Forest.
Right.
But so you're saying you guys are seeing this as a progression of events linearly.
Right. And
okay.
there's
I can see that. I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
It can be viewed both ways easily because there's no indication one way or the other.
And
there's no
right, and then Black Flag actually brings up the next point I was going to say is the real question is how long did it take the Hidden to find Segura's shell?
Right.
Justin, real quick. I know you've been holding your time.
No, you're good. I actually had a question. So to Blue's, I'm not Blue. To Beard's comment about Osiris still being able to use Dawnblade after Segura was damaged and all that. and whether or not that ties into exactly when the traveler's light was blocked. Do you guys view Osiris's abilities inside the forest as being dependent of light? So, like his ability to clone himself. I don't see that being a function of his light, but rather him just manipulating the simulation.
He's simulating that he has the light. Yeah,
that's
I can
what I'm saying.
I can totally see that being the case.
If
And that
he
would
did
be
that,
super.
that would
That'd be super snarky. Like
That-
I would love
all
it.
the different.
Well, I kind of see him when he's in the forest as being kind of this like Neo Matrix type character, where he's figured out the rules, and now he can bend them and he can break some if he wants.
Well, and that also to that point too, he has the little Vex ducks, the little cubes.
Yeah,
We don't know yeah, the fidget cube. We don't know what those do. So
That's his interface.
right, but what Justin is basically saying is he's hacking the forest.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my God! Now I
Okay.
have a picture of Osiris on stilts yelling hacks.
God. The other thing that would bring up though is that would mean if his reflections are just a
Yep.
ability based in the infinite force.
I don't think
those
they're
cards.
I don't think they're abilities of Osiris. I think they are manufacturers of the system.
Right. That means those cards talking about the shining, what we thought was a reflection with in front of the queen, was it Queen 2, and the other one with what
Osiris,
you said
but
Shax?
Yeah, Shax.
Yeah.
To be clear, though, it never specifies where Shax is.
Would Shax go into the infinite forest?
Where would Shax not go into? I mean, seriously, have you seen Shax?
Yeah.
Have you heard Shax yell at things? I mean, it's not like he would be scared.
Shax and the Red Jacks in the infinite forest.
Oh
Sounds
my
like
God.
a great time.
Not in the forest, but
He just has to
does
go into the gate.
Mercury.
Yeah,
He
he's-
does go to Mercury. He has to go ahead and plan out Crucible maps. So per that point, he very well could.
Now I want
Yeah.
a cartoon about that.
But we also speaking to that Queen 2 card, I mean, I believe me, I understand what it is to get kind of nailed into an understanding of something. We don't have to be married to this understanding that the brightness that Eris shields her eyes from in the Queen 2 card is some sort of copy of Osiris giving off the light that we see in the
Well,
Panoptes mission. Like,
I'm
Here's-
just
here's
the other thing.
I guess what I'm trying
the
to say is it
concepts
could
that
have
we
as
had.
much to do with Eris as it has to do with Osiris. I mean, it could be, it could be very much something to do with her eyesight, her way of seeing light and the world around her, as it has to do with the way he physically appeared.
Well, here
Like
I'll do
Daredevil seeing red and everything. Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
and I'll do you one better on that one. We, here's the problem with the Infinite Forest. We don't even know that Ghost Fragment Queen 2 has actually happened.
Yep.
Okay, here's
no.
the big problem. Here's the big problem.
No,
that's- Here's the real big problem with the Infinite Forest, Blue. I'll do you one better. We're not real sure we're not in it.
Yep. Oh, we had a question. That was a question on the lore panel that I wrote down. And Beard and I need to sit down and have this conversation because that is actually a very good point that is brought up. When we first
it would
meet,
explain all the Vex gates.
It would. And the thing is like the other, now the argument for that is that the inability to simulate paracausal abilities and the fact that the actually no. Anyways, the question was there that branches into so many debates, but the question was basically
and we'll step away.
after what's the P names are really bad for me.
Panoptes.
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 After Panoptes somehow manages to steal Sagira, which is never really explained either, we just get booted out of the forest with no memory of how we got out.
Right.
And we're fine. So the question for the lore panel was, how do we know that we're not actually from that point still in the forest? Because if you remember, every strike, every mission, every time we go into the forest, we have to run in to the mission, and then we have to run back out to a set exit point. That one mission, we never run to a set exit point. We just pop back out of the forest.
I'm going to say all of a sudden we find out that we're being finely tuned to a Vex mind that's going to suck out our light like scene 14, you know?
And we all notice the little top on the table is just still spinning and hasn't fallen over yet.
Brian.
Yep.
So
I'll correct myself for a third time. The card that I was trying to reference actually is Null Calamity 9, because this is the one in which we have Sagira and Osiris talk to each other about
he's
meditating and all of that. Yep, he pops off on his own. And a couple, I'll just read like the last half here. Eyes closed, Osiris shook his head. Many equations lead to this answer. A sound like a drum beat, but with the impact of an earthquake, shook the lighthouse. Sagira darted through the crumbling chamber. What do we do? Another bone-rattling drum beat kicks up clouds of dust. Osiris floated to his feet. We start over. Boom! Through the window, a shadow eclipsed the Vex eyes. But first, he said, you'll have to res me again, old friend.
And that takes place after the campaign, right?
That takes place afterward, like directly after, because she says how she's misplaced Sagira again. They talked about Panoptes becoming scrap metal. But yeah, this is entirely like directly afterward, at least to like how we're kind of noticing it all, or at least so we're led to believe. But that being said, like the course of events that is the dark future is something that needs to be averted by slight events. It is not something that, and as Osiris says within the Fall of Osiris comics, as much as we don't like to refer back to those, he does mention how the Vex are an enemy that we need to constantly fight against. They are not something that is simple to defeat. Not like the Hive where they tire, the Cabal where they run out of reinforcements, or the Fallen where they unfortunately will eventually run out of things to scavenge and keep themselves alive unless they become the Scorn. But those are the largest thing that we need to at least look at when it comes to Osiris. He knows that this is the outcome that is eventually going to happen.
Which is why he's so petrified of them.
Absolutely.
And that's why he disagreed that the darknet or whatever, the Hive, were the biggest problem. He's it makes me think of the old adage, and I'll twist it a little bit to make it more appropriate for Destiny. How do you beat the Vex? One bullet at a time.
I'm gonna say it's like he mentions like what would I prefer, the darkness or the Vex? And he comes back with, I would prefer the darkness, because at least then I would have some semblance of partial free will and a chance. Where the Vex, I don't have a chance unless I know how to stop what they're trying to put together. Because they are not an end, they are convergence. And that is the important thing to take in as a very large distinction between them, and why they are so much more sinister. Why dark that's so dark blocks out other darkness pretty well, as the Stranger says.
It hates other evil things.
Yep.
It's so evil.
It's so evil.
Do we need to go all Vision 47 on this?
Oh,
we very well could. We very well could. Then again, both of those, I think I've talked about this on here before, Vision 47 and 81 have completely different meanings now, by the by.
Yeah.
Well, in talking about visions, let's kind of jump into the Infinite Forest, right? Because I know that's kind of where we are kind of dancing around a little bit. So this kind of goes back to the thing that I asked Green to remember, because I knew I wouldn't remember. But Did she step
Yeah.
away? Oh, she stepped away.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize that.
Well, tell me what you wanted her to remember.
I
and
don't
I'll
know.
remember it.
I don't remember it, Justin.
It was it was something related to like Dawnblade and whatnot with
the
trying to
simulator.
help
But
here.
yeah. Anyways, let's just jump to Infinite Forest real quick. So
Sure.
the question that's raised in Traveler Judgment 5 is one that's I kind of think is worth a debate here. Because the logical disconnect of the ability of the Infinite Forest to predict light and Osiris' supposed prophecy about the Traveler reawakening. That's the biggest crux of ascribing all his prophecies to the Traveler, which is pretty much
Right.
what the entire Judgment 5 is about, is we can't say that his prophecies are all coming from the Infinite Forest, because he makes prophecies about things with light, and the Vex are not able to kind of... It's the introduction of free will into a closed, a predetermined system. They're not able to handle it. That being said, we do have a lot of descriptions about the forest. And the first one that I want to kind of comment on is description of the forest from the Gateway mission. And this is from Ikora. And she says, the Vex replace the planet's core with their own machines. We call it the Infinite Forest. An ever-expanding labyrinth of realities. No two paths are ever the same. No one has ever escaped. It was Osiris's obsession. And then we have a description from one of the reflections of Osiris in the Beyond Infinity mission, where he says, behold, the Infinite Forest, a planet-sized prediction engine, simulating trillions of realities in parallel, all geared towards a single Vex purpose. Tell me, Guardian, were you there when the Traveler woke? A living Traveler changes everything, for good and bad. Now many things have been set in motion. Osiris wrote the Lost Prophecies to warn the other Guardians, and they sent him away. But you cannot exile the future. And then Segura says in the Tree of Probabilities, the Infinite Forest is a doomsday machine, but when you see it like this, it's almost beautiful. And so again, we're not traveling through time, we're traveling through simulated realities that are basically generated to allow the Vex to see different variables of what... It's basically, in my mind, it's like the Batman. If you've ever read a Batman novel, it's how they explain Batman's quote-unquote ability. He just sees all the possibilities. It's not that he's not foretelling the future. He's just very good at picking up on nuances and very good at predicting what people are going to do.
Except for the Infinite Forest is blind to one aspect.
Right. And that's the kind of the problem that is raised within Judgment 5 is because we know that, well, let me say this again. Because we believe that the Vex are unable to accommodate for the light, we cannot say that all of Osiris's prophecies are therefore derived from the Infinite Forest. Because Osiris has prophecies about the Traveler, about Guardians, about, things about that nature which the Vex supposedly don't have the ability to calculate for. Now, that being said, they do have Saint 14. So some of those assumptions might need to be a little bit recalibrated on that note.
I don't think they can simulate.
They can't simulate light as a whole, but the
Right.
concept of paracausality, I think they can... They have to... It's like chaos theory. You have to allow for it, and it probably drives them up a wall as much as chaos theory drives anybody with OCD up a wall. And Osiris actually comment... Oh, no, sorry, go for it.
Could the Infinite Forest simulate orcs?
It
That's-
simulates Taken, doesn't it? No?
Well, so
I'm
here's...
not speaking
and that's...
about
and
Taken or the Hive, because those are very different than just
Well, and
orcs.
here's the other thing, and this is the debate about the Vault of Glass, right? Is it that they're able to simulate what they've seen them do, or is it because there's a difference, right? Their purpose of simulation is to predict, whereas the simulations that we see might just be copies of what they have seen, happen in the field.
I mean,
Well, they do that when we go back to the past of them landing on Mercury. You see
if
them play.
you want to quote lore, the accurate ideas would end up being no, they wouldn't be able to simulate Oryx as a whole.
Well, not wholly,
And
yeah.
No, because I fall back on this within the Books of Sorrow, because we see what
With
Koraya
Korra,
is
yeah.
able to do. Koraya is looking back on these things and looking back on Oryx, and the best that he can do, she can do, it can do, is create this bootstrap example, and all of a sudden it's Arash. It's not even Oryx at all. And of course that leads back to the theory that, you know, Teox is talking about Arash to the Ekamine, and that's what the Vex are pulling from the computer on. Only because they have no idea like what they can even think to talk about or contemplate the ideas of Oryx as a whole, because they just started to understand this idea of worship. And if memory serves, that was like 100 years that both Oryx and Korea have actually fought each other. Like, it was a fair amount of time for the Vex to actually put together this hypothesis and idea of what the paracausality of Oryx is all about, and they still can't do it. So no, I would say to the whole end, it isn't a possibility.
But would you not think that the Force would be a step up in terms of computing power as a platform when compared to Korea? And anything to simulate anything, the more data, the better. So I think there might be more data at hand, and also I kind of see the Forest as being a little bit more advanced.
The Forest also
platform
has a world mind instead of just the. Though in hindsight, Korea did have all of the Vex, because remember that it positioned itself at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know. That debate could be really.
It's the paracausality that kind of throws a.
Oh yeah, it throws a monkey wrench. Yeah, it does, and it's the best way to explain that is in a predeterministic world, the person with free will ruins everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, you can't predict it because by definition it's not defined.
Did they not? I mean, they predict headstrong Cabal commanders,
but Cabal aren't paracausal. Psionic abilities aren't they're not paracausal.
Neither are the Fallen, realistically. Like most
are the Taken by definition not paracausal?
The Taken
are
go for
Taken are paracausal in how they form, but they are not paracausal in how they act.
Yeah,
because realistically, you can simulate the ideas of fire. I can spout fire from my mouth if I really want to. You know, it's not going to be a fun idea, but I could do so. They're not using any kind of paracausal powers whatsoever. They're taking from the examples of different paracausality that need to require them to be given them by Oryx and given them by the power of the worm. But there's something that is apparently easily either simulated or looked at. The ability to teleport back and forth is something that the Vex do all the time. That's easy for them to do with the Scions or otherwise. I just don't see that their base potential and powers of the Taken that we've seen that have been simulated are in any way necessarily like hard for them to look into
and again,
or understand.
it's the same argument about what are the Tetch ones doing with this Taken? Are they creating the Taken power, or are they just harvesting it? Yeah, I would argue that they're harvesting it. They're not creating it. And that's a difference. That's a difference. They're holding a mirror up to the reality that they exist in. No, I mean, and it's an excellent question. I totally see where you're coming from on that.
I just kind of keep coming back to whether we believe that, to bring it back to Osiris, whether we believe that he's actually able to manipulate the code in the Forest and copy himself, or whether we believe that these are simulations of himself that he's pulling on.
I think there are simulations of himself that he's created,
that he's run.
Yeah,
using
his little fidget cube. using the
well,
fidget
using
cube.
the architecture that's present in the forest.
Well, okay, but
Well,
let's look at this real quick. Hang on. Let's look at this real quick. A hacker can write a virus. A hacker can write a virus using the parameters of a computer that would destroy that computer. That's not unheard of. So if Osiris is actually hacking the infinite forest, right? All he's doing is using the parameters of the coding language of the infinite forest to create for himself a reality in which he has multiple versions. He's splintering himself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing is like it's almost hinted at that's what he's doing with the reflections, because that's what Segura kind of mentions. Segura's explanation of the reflections, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, Green. I see that you're floating on the limitations of the forest, and I want to come back to that because it's a very good one. But the ability to create reflections according to Segura is, she says, Osiris has adopted some of the technology of the forest to his own purposes. We are going to run into his reflections. They're copies of himself, made so he can explore multiple pathways at once. And yes, I'm aware that it makes Osiris seem like an egomaniac, but don't worry, he is. And so that's what I'm saying is like the reflections are literally, he has bootstrapped himself into the forest in such a manner that he is literally hacking the operating system, which is why what's his face always is so pissed at him, because he is the virus inside the computer. And what does any good antivirus do? It tries to eradicate the virus. So that's what it's doing.
I haven't found a good antivirus, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't think they're ready.
That's because you keep downloading voice modulators. But
Listen. Pins is my good antivirus.
That's a fair point. Actually, Pins is a very good antivirus. I don't think you'll appreciate that, but
I've been very careful. I do not think that they're ready and that they're simulating Guardians and Oryx. I do think that with enough data present and enough computing power, I think it's an inevitability that it can and will happen.
And totally agree with you, because that's exactly what happens with Saint 14, right? Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Now, they could only do it for one Guardian, though.
And to add to this point, simulating a power and simulating how it would
what
it does would be different from what the actual thing that happened would be. I could throw a Nova Bomb. You wouldn't know how a Nova Bomb works, but you could still take and analyze that ability and know, it's going to cause this much destructive force on some kind of level. And that could vary from maybe Guardian to Guardian in that respect as well, but quite frankly, you could still look at it from the ideas of, I know the outcome of this, even if I don't understand it. It's like understanding some basic math to at least say that 2 + 2 is 4, and you're given the ideas on those bases. Sure, I know what the outcome is behind it, but I don't necessarily know the quantifiable ideas behind the number 2. There's still some differences that pan back into there with mathematics.
That being said, we have seen Forest rerun of not necessarily a simulation, but basically rerun what was inside the Vault of Glass with multiple Guardians at the same time.
But
we didn't see them use their abilities.
Well,
we did.
We didn't. We saw the motions, but we didn't see the abilities.
That's what I was going to say. Were they just shadows?
Yep.
Well, no. But
they didn't pause it there. Like there was even a motion where a warlock jumps in the air and is clearly doing the motion for Nova Bomb, and there is no Nova Bomb, but there is still the motion for it, and there is still the completed motion for it. I should add. In addition, there's another one where a striker is running over and does like the ground pound, but we still don't see an instance of that actually taking effect. So they're seeing how these motions happen, but they still don't compute the idea of, this is what's going on. Like that's what I see it as. Notion.
I see it as they're doing a shadow play of the Guardian's abilities.
Sometimes They're miming us.
Right.
Yeah,
No, right.
well,
they are.
Again,
they are.
They're figuring out the motions of the ritual. They're
Right.
trying to figure it out. And
They're
they
trying.
can't.
Here's the thing. They're trying to figure out the geometry of this space.
Right.
Now, that being said, can Osiris actually use the infinite force to prophesize things for the future then?
Well,
we've talked about how he's
I'd say
using
predict.
it to...
So here's the thing: is
Make them
yes,
informed guesses.
he can
Yes.
make Yep, Justin has it. Yes, he is predicting things because, and this is going back to the comment that you're hovering over on the Omega mission. He specifically says he predicted many things, but he never saw our guardian. And because of that unknown variable, that throws all the predictions out. Because now there's a new variable. All the equations need to be reworked. Remember, going back to Ikora, Ikora's reaction to the Traveler being awoken. All the calculations need to be rewritten about circles. You know, I made fun of that, but I mean, that's the thing is, when you're talking about quantum mechanics, when you're talking about string theory or, you know, chaos theory, whatever, what have you, these very vast, you know, mathematical equations, you change the value of one variable, everything changes. Everything changes. And that's why Osiris hopes about our guardian, because he did not, in all his exploration of the infinite forest, he never predicted our guardian. He never saw us coming. And when we did that, when we snapped, the freaking Vex Mind that I cannot remember, when we shot him in the face and killed him in the Infinite Forest, at least one iteration of him, right, which is basically the equivalent of us deleting his code. When we did that, that was a variable that Osiris never predicted, that Panoptes never predicted, because if Panoptes had predicted it, he wouldn't have let it happen. Mm-hmm. And so because of that upset that we created inside this reality machine, it forces everything to be recalculated. It makes the future present again. There's not a dark future now. There's actually a future filled with light or darkness, you know, but a future that's not convergence. That's where his hope it kind of seems to come from within that comment in the Omega mission. Is now we have a future. Now we have something that, you know, at least hopefully with the change in equations, we can, you know, work towards doing something.
Black Flag brings up the point too that you were talking about with our guardian.
It's
which is so weird. Why are we so darn special?
It's because here's the thing: this is one of the I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox because this is one of the biggest problems one of the biggest thoughts that I have is. There's a number of different reasons why we could be special. And I mean, I've got
a very good reason why.
You're right. I mean, but the problem again is the model exists. If you are in a predeterministic world, if you are in a world in which everything is predictable, and all you do is introduce one person or one thing with free will, one thing that is not slave to a predeterministic route, it will completely screw up everything in that system because of the simple fact that that system is not able to contain or predict the individual entity. And that is what we're doing with the Vex. We are completely and utterly jacking with their equations because for some reason, for some unexplainable reason, they can't predict us. And that's why Osiris sees our guardian as special. That's why, you know, Ikora even makes, I mean, all the Vanguard mentors make comments about the guardian. Saladin makes comments. I mean, all the power figures in the Destiny universe are making these comments about this our character. Sorry, go for it, Green.
I was just going to say, in particular with Osiris's predicament within the Infinite Forest, if you introduced any character into the Infinite Forest, it would have changed things dramatically. It could have been Cade going in there. That doesn't mean it would have turned out the same way. Like, Panoptes may not have been destroyed. But I would say any Guardian walking into the Infinite Forest, because Osiris has been in there basically by himself for years and years at this point. If anybody would have gone in there, it would have changed things. Maybe not.
Yeah. No. It would have changed things, but I think my point is that Osiris's comment towards us was more about I think I took it as more of our defeat of Panoptes.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't just go into the forest and muck things up. No, we went into the forest and deleted like the primary boot system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we completely basically forced that computer to have to reinstall everything.
Right.
So
It's the same thing as when we defeated Atheon or Atheon, whichever one you want to say it.
That's still debatable.
The godless one.
There's
The
one
godless.
recording though. There's a recording in D2, a scannable that pronounces it for you.
I know. I love that
I don't
YouTube
care.
video. I love that YouTube video of the guy losing
Yeah.
his mind because of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's finally settled. But with the prophecies,
Mm-hmm.
how does Osiris get them now? It goes back to the Thanatonautics question earlier.
That's what it was.
That's what it was.
Sorry,
I think
stepped away
that's
for a second.
no. Beard and I were both like, we were all like, we know we told her to remember something, but none of us can remember it. And then she went away. This is why you're not allowed to leave ever.
I have to go pee sometime.
That's why I think a lot of the prophecies are from Thanatonatic visions. First off, because it would explain a bit of the jumbledness, which you'll note with most prophecies, that's a kind of a given, is that they're always jumbled and vague, which, again, Osiris makes that comment as well. But I really think, there could be some of his prophecies that he, predicted inside of the reality machine that is the Vex net or the Infinite Forest, sure. But the ones about the Traveler and stuff like that, I really think those are kind of spurred from Thanatonautics.
I could see that. Now, to fall back on something that Black Flag was talking about, though, too, which could start to bring in a
Calm down, Marty McFly.
Yeah. So he said, all of this just leads back to we're a time traveler theory in my head. And then he goes on to say it's more the fact that he says, I never saw you that makes me ask why. There was somebody else that had to ask the same exact question. Does anybody want to take a guess at who that was?
Beard's favorite person ever.
Stranger. Yeah, the Exo Stranger had to do the same exact thing because she was bouncing back and forth, or Elsie was bouncing back and forth on these different world lines, apparently, to attempt to find the one that ended up getting back to the same spot or a spot that was a victory for her.
Right, and so here's the other thing that kind of will throw everyone's little head for a loop, possibly, is this also paints the fact of the machine that everyone's so convinced Elsie's using to jump from time to time. Is that actually jumping from time to time, or is it simply a viewing platform? Is it a portable infinite forest?
Well, that falls back not from the Infinite Forest, but from the device of what the Future War Cult utilized. And even then, we have to go back and look at what Praedyth was looking at, too, because his ghost mentions how he ended up seeing somebody that was out that fit the Exo-Stranger's position. So is it that she's able to do both?
Right,
Because she
and
went
then
into the
also
Baltic
his
Glass.
ghost was a Future War Cult ghost, too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I'll ask you this. Instead of thinking of the strangers having a portable infinite forest, are we just in a bigger one?
Or is this the Ishtar Collective and we see what the Vix are simulating through the computer?
Yeah.
You're talking about multiverse theory to a T at that point, which that goes further than just,
Really?
Well, I'm just trying to illustrate that there's multiple layers of the ways that you can look, the ways that you can ask these questions and look at these things.
Well, yeah, and that like I said, it all pans right back towards multiverse ideas.
Yeah,
that's
onion.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna say with the onion or otherwise, like
Disney reference.
We're like a cake. No, you're more like an onion.
Yes. You got layers.
Yeah, that's just like multiverse per a whole, though. Realistically, like so many different outcomes that could pop from one outcome. You'd start talking butterfly effect at that point if you really want to, but then how one thing could change, but it doesn't affect the other, and then it splits off into something entirely different. It's multiverse, or it's multiple timeline, or it's this, that, the other thing. Like one way or another, we ascribe to one measure in how something could handle or change, and there may be a proper ending thesis or theory to it all, where one doesn't explain the other, but yet you look at it from another example and suddenly it's not multiverse theory and it is multiple timeline theory. It's there are obviously, like we said, too many layers to be considered on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I think we covered the gambit on most of this, to be honest. I can't think of much else that, unless Blue, you got anything else to
No, I mean that's.
But
I got a question for you guys.
okay.
Which of Osiris's abilities would you want?
I mean, from a content creator standpoint, being able to split myself up would be pretty freaking helpful.
He's in so many channels, Beard.
Oh, God.
I'm just glad, you know what? I'm just glad someone else is getting made fun of for having channels, even though it's not the same channel, even though it's not the same type of channel.
Thing. Oh my God.
I get made fun of.
One the other day.
Hey,
wanted a No Man's
the
Sky
rooms.
channel.
I might have already made it. Don't tell Green that.
I don't know why I'm even on this podcast some weeks with you people. Jesus.
He loves us. Don't let him trick you.
Yeah.
Even though he pushed me out of a chair if I fell asleep, apparently.
But Justin, what power would you want from Osiris?
I would just, the power of foresight, I think, would keep me out of a lot of trouble. So I'm just going to go with that
one. Waitress? Anyone?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yep.
Or get him into even more trouble.
I mean, maybe that could just come down to like situational awareness. Let's be honest here for a second.
Listen, there's a word for that. It's called wherewithal.
That's also a power.
That is definitely also a power.
It's also outside of my skill set.
Lying isn't, though.
Blue, what about you?
I kind of like the idea of like the absolute manipulation of light that we see with Osiris in regards to like not just what we see within the Curse of Osiris, but also like if you read the Destiny 1 information, like he seems to be almost. I kind of jokingly, when we first like were introduced to Osiris, I kind of jokingly referred to him as like the Deadpool of the Destiny world. Because he one of the introduction comments that we get in the Osiris card, which is, you know, honestly the first introduction that we had of Osiris, was how he was frustrated with all the stuff that every single player in the Destiny, you know, community at the time was getting fed up with. And it was hilarious because he was like, you know, running strikes all the time and I'm not getting any loot. The Cryptarch is always gypping me. And it was just really funny. And I just remember that as being like the big thing for me, that I just remember that standing out. He kind of had this otherworldly awareness of the universe. And I really liked that about his character. And then you kind of see that with the Curse of Osiris DLC, in which he's using the Infinite Forest against the people who created the Infinite Forest. I mean, just think about that for a second. He's actually using
it.
Yeah, he's using Vex technology against the Vex. Like, I mean, he's like the universe's greatest hacker, almost. Which is, you know, in my mind, that's kind of a really interesting ability.
Can I just say, this week's had one of the meanest lore entries I think Bungie's ever had, which is a scan in the tower in the hangar. It says, these crates are completely full of Vanguard history books. There are over 30 just focused on Osiris. If that's not the biggest middle finger
to our community,
to the lore community, I don't know what is.
Basically.
I mean, if they've seen Blue's mind map, dear
What?
God.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I could just imagine Blue scanning that for the first time. I just kind of hear the inner monologue.
I just want to see him send that to one of the writers. Like, after, like, if we ever get a chance to talk to them again, have him just be like,
here,
oh, by the way, here.
This is all the stuff up to the Taken King. I didn't get a chance to update it after that because I broke MindMeister. It won't load the mind map anymore.
It's not the tree of probabilities, Blue.
God. MindMeister.
So
I just had to call that out. I couldn't let that go.
No, that's a good one. I actually honestly completely forgot about that scannable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's about it. Other than, I will say this, if you haven't done this, do it. Line up all the Osiris weapons in order and read them all like one big passage. If
you want me to, I can do it right now.
Yeah.
What does the text say?
Thank you, Bluebot.
Keep in mind, every second break that I have is going to be a new weapon. The only one that really doesn't fit into most of this mix is Perfect Paradox. And that is only because Perfect Paradox kind of talks about itself on a different realm. So
yeah, and it's not numbered.
It's really not, which also helps. I'll still read it all the same because it's still freaking good, but I'll do that after all's said and done. So again, this starts with Garden Progeny 1. Go from 1 and then Conqueror 2 and then check Queen King 3. Read them in that order if you are looking to follow along. 2 siblings cleaved by time and space, reflections never found alone. The endings of the eldritch race, a path long seen, but never known. To Tower comes a war in red, an orphan sounds the Empire's call. Mortal angels mourn the dead, while lightless light wraps night in pall. An army meets and stands and falls. 3 nobles wage their hopeless war. In shifting madness, evil crawls. One stands above the battle's roar. A charnel but effulgent orb, a beacon in a loathsome dark. Fetid corpses rise, a too long absent gibbous spark. A visitor ignites the sky, and in the truth of lighted dreams, above the dead and yet to die, a legion's blade with fire screams. Amid the endless death one flew, unnatural all-consuming need, and in the space between the two, accursed comprehension breed. A spark of knowledge with each fall, the purpose of the endless youth. No longer shunned, dark's nameless call now brings about tenebrous truth. They sowed the first, now reap the last, forever narrows to a line, where light will fade into the past, when all's converted, nothing shines. A sacred eye that speaks in lies, upending future in its path. The way before us to the skies shall see itself in ancient wrath. See who's robed as if a god, who stands with pride above the rest. Destroy this ancient, nameless fraud. Destroy the one whose death was blessed. And for the final one with Perfect Paradox, a tale that's different from the rest. The thread unfurls against the clocks. The one the speaker loved the best must have a perfect paradox.
Ugh, so good.
And I have every single one of those written out to actually start to mean something different for this point, because none of them read the same from where they did before.
Isn't that what's great about all this?
Yes, it is, because once again it calls back to that same card I keep referencing over and over and over again that came out in Dark Below with Toland, and how he was talking about the frickin' hive gods, and we had no idea who they were, and now all of a sudden, out of Taken King and so on, we find out more and more information about that card, and we still find out more and more about that, and I'm still excited because we're going to hear more from Toland and Forsaken. Ah! Anyway, those are all of the prophecies of Osiris, which I think is a great place to stop on.
Yep.
Let's
stop. Let's end on the whispers of what's to come.
Whisper.
So you guys got shout-outs?
Yes.
Justin?
Go ahead.
Oh, you want to do them? Okay.
It's like silent.
I think I'd keep the pause in there. That was a good one.
So,
do you have shout-outs? Yes.
Yeah, I've got brilliant shout-outs for this week. I would just like to say this week, check out tomorrow if just keep an eye on my Twitter. I'm going to be on Lit Lore tomorrow night.
Nice.
Oh God!
with our good friend Xanafan, and I'm not too clear on the channel info right now. If you're listening live, just watch my Twitter, and I will tweet the details tomorrow. But it should be good. Should be good. About 9:30 Central Standard Time. You'll get to hear all about the Ahamkara.
Oh no!
Yes.
Dragon theory.
The
Yes.
Dragon Theory.
Dragon
Yes.
Theory while drunk. This is going to be terrible.
Well, honestly, that's kind of how
theory.
that's how it kind of got created.
Yes, it's Drunken Theory. I have a brand new bottle of tequila. I'm going to try not to swallow the worm god. But
oh God, freaking! How do you even?
I would like to take this time. We didn't get to this in the actual chat, but just a great big shout out to one of my new favorite figures, Panoptes. We didn't get to it, but I was doing some research on Panoptes in Greek mythology.
Oh yeah.
And Argus Panoptes actually is my new hero. He hath slain the Chthonic serpent-legged monster Echidna as she slept in her cave. Thank you, Panoptes, for securing a brighter future for all of our children.
This is why you have a
Back to you, Blue.
sign snake as your emblem in the new poster, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I shall slay him or her.
What we need to do is we need to put a Panoptes eye behind the snake.
Yes.
Behind the
Yeah, there
Yes.
we go.
It's actually really check it out. It's really interesting because
It's a really
Panoptes
cool-
is the
yeah.
all-seeing.
Mhm.
So check it out.
Good grief.
Beard, what about you?
Well, first off, I do want to just say thank you for the warm welcome back from my community, because my first video that I posted in over a month on my main channel, and I will say my only channel before anybody decides to say much else, just the warm welcome back was very nice to have. I being gone for like over a month and a half, and then posting a video, I was like, oh, let's look at like 20 views because I'm like completely out of the algorithm and nobody's going to get noticed on this at all. But it was just nice to see familiar faces again, and you really, I don't think you guys know how much it is or how awesome it is to just see all of you now and again, and I hope that I can start to devote more time to you again, because I felt awful that I haven't been able to, either for personal stuff that's been going on or just my brain being my brain or otherwise. But I simply just have to say thank you for being you guys and just supporting me wherever you can, because I, as much as I would probably still do this even if I had 20 viewers, it's still just a nice little ego boost on my end, especially for me, where I have no self-esteem to begin with. So thank you very much for that.
And he's not lying. Like, getting him to accept a compliment is like getting Justin to hug a snake.
It's like pretty much.
Yeah,
not gonna happen.
No, I might. We might have to try that next time. I'll be like, yo, the fangs are out of this one. Is that okay, Justin?
Nope.
Just bring a stuffed one.
Mm-hmm. It's a noodle.
No. That might
the fat noodles get stuck in corners.
Nope rope. Nope.
Nope rope.
Oh God, the nope rope.
My second shout out though has to go to Bungie.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I've brought them up a couple times, and I know some people have called me a Bungie shill for doing it. But you know what? I don't care. I'm going to call out good things when I see them happen. Bungie has done a fantastic thing twice over this week. The first comes from our very good friend, Mylan Games, who actually was able to finally reveal what the project he was working on was. And it's glorious. So
thank you,
while I have my own handwritten stuff over here personally, and it's not the Grimoire, it's thoughts on the Grimoire, you guys are going to finally be able to buy direct from Bungie, and then later on through other means, the Grimoire in and of itself. And it's not the whole of it right away. It's volume 1, but it's stuff that all kind of like ties itself into a story format. So for us, we're extremely excited about it because it's going to be able to show what connective pieces and what organizational pieces for the Grimoire Bungie will find canonically. It also showcases different stories and means that we may not have thought of beforehand, or maybe different clarifications that need to be written in. It will also have art on the inside, and we may be able to see things that we don't know about previously. So all of these things are going to start like popping up, and where you would, and I have to just highlight the cost, not again to say that I'm just saying go buy the thing or that this is not a plug for Bungie, but they're only charging $25 for the thing, and it's 128 pages. I can think of art books that I have spent $50 on that have less than that. So if you are looking for anything that is going to kind of like shipping costs and so on aside, of course, but if you've been looking for a handwritten grimoire, if you've been looking for the grimoire personalized or officialized by Bungie, it's finally on its way. The second thing that Bungie did this week, or really from even last week, and it was still kind of unfolding for us because we didn't know the full details, the Whisper of the Worm quest. The live team did a absolute bang up job with that quest, so much so that it has opened up another 30 pages worth of speculation and thought within one of my journals. It is that important to the way that all of this is being viewed, and how either Warmind or Zol or how the Hive, how they're currently being put together, and all the implications that exist later on, that it is insane how one mission was able to do this. So when one mission is executed well enough, when one lore entry is executed well enough, all of a sudden it opens up all these different doors, and you have to take them all in some fashion or some form to add to the theories and ideas and speculations that we have so far. To see alt names pop up, to see an older weapon crop up again, to see other warlock names pop up again, Olentan, is so important to the way that this story is kind of developing and so on. So again, to the live team at Bungie, you did a great job with the Whisper of the Worm quest, minus the fact that your randomization on public events is total crap.
It's fixed. It's more fixed
we'll look
this
past
time.
that. Yeah, I heard they found a way to fix it up for this event, which is good. And it comes back every week, which is actually more than what the old Black Spindle was about too. Because the old Spindle, we had to wait I think it was almost a month, if not more.
3 to 4.
Because it was determined on the
heroic
daily
heroic day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which I miss
there's that.
those.
They're coming back. They're coming back, which is great. But yeah, I absolutely love Whisper of the Worm. The lore behind it. I love the quest behind it. The challenge feels right. It feels like it's there. And I'm so happy to start to see this game like be put into the hands of the people that, quite frankly, care about it and want to see it develop right, because it's been absolutely amazing the last few months with how the direction has shifted so quickly. So definitely good on the live team for what they've been doing over there. Thank you guys.
Green, what about you?
My shout-out's actually going to be a little bit more cheesy. It's actually going to be to all of you guys, the listeners. And it's something that kind of it hits me every time I talk to somebody on Twitter about things for the show, or just meeting people at Guardian Con and stuff like that. It's a really good reminder every once in a while to be like, hey, you guys are what makes the show work. That's the end all be all. Like, we will sit here and talk about it, but it's you guys who really make the show a lot more fun for us. Getting your comments and feedback and reviews, it's amazing. And the show has grown a lot more than even I realized, as far as our Discord's grown quite a bit. And it's because you guys are sharing, and it's going to sound really cheesy, you guys are sharing the good news of the Focus Fire chat. And we love you guys. We love being here for you guys and love sharing what we are passionate about. And so thank you to all of you guys, the listeners, for being here week after week, listening to us, sharing us with your random clanmate or fire team friend who's just like, oh, I'm so bored with the game right now, but I want to still be involved somehow, but I don't have time to play. You guys who are sharing them, that's amazing, and that helps us grow, and it helps people learn about the lore. So Bungie does put out a grimoire anthology with the help of one of the lore creators. It makes us be heard, and it makes us feel good, and you guys are, I just want to give everybody a hug. I was talking about this the other day with one of my coworkers. Just like, I have never been to a convention where I've seen so many people hugging. Mm-hmm. And especially lore people. Every lore person was like super huggy, and I am not a huggy person. You can ask my wife. I am not a huggy person, but
that's a lie.
It's true.
She hugs us all the time.
I'm a hugger.
All right, Justin is a hugger, so fair warning.
I'm a super hugger. Bring it in.
I would hug you through the mic, but that would sound awkward with awkwardness.
Never. Anyways, carry on.
But yes, thank you, listeners, and thank you for the people who are jumping into chat and talking about things, and new friends and old friends, and bringing up new ideas. I love it when somebody brings me like the spin foil. I may not be able to respond all the time right away, but it definitely is something that I try to like forward onto Beard or Blue if I need to.
Yes, she does.
All the time. And it gets them going, and then we have these long conversations off to the side. And
while I'm in the middle of writing a script, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean?
Forward onto Beard sounds like a Halo ship.
Oh my gosh, yes! Writing that one down too.
We need to do another Halo episode.
Are you giving him more material for introductions?
To be fair, I don't need much help. Gamma Trap's doing a lot of my work for me.
Apparently. Sorry, Green.
No, you're okay. Blue, what about you for your shout-outs?
Well, quick, too, just to
go for it.
coattail off of that, like, you guys legitimately do, and I'll just ride the cheesy coattail here, you legitimately do make dreams come true, because and that might as well also be a Disney reference, the ideas of like Matt being able to go to Bungie and be able to or consult for them and do stuff with them, that has been something he's gone on record and said, like, I've wanted to do this for a long time. So anytime that you guys want to, like, we say it so often, like, yes, if you can share, if you show us to your friends, whatever. Those kind of things do kind of help us get into a space of like, well, these people are very knowledgeable in what they do and so on, and we, maybe can be looked at by other people just as much, and we get into different things, and it opens up different possibilities for us. For me, it was making the channel, starting the channel, and now all of a sudden here I am on a podcast, and otherwise here I am on different podcasts and trying to like stream with people besides, or being invited to do these different things that I never would have expected to even be like invited to at all, or being considered a special guest for a convention, one way or another in that realm. Like, those are the things that you guys seriously open up the doors to say, you trust me enough with the information that I give, and it's a flattering experience as much as it is a humbling one, because I never want to screw up for you, and I certainly always want to get back to you where I can. So again, thank you very much for all that you do for me and continue to do. Thank you for what you continue to do for this podcast and this community, and anything that you do for that intersection, regardless, is important. Whether you think it is or not, it's important.
Yeah, pretty much what everyone's just said. Those are my shout-outs. And and if you guys, again, if you guys haven't had a chance, and I'll fair warning, Game Informer is doing a pretty much a month full of spoilers. So if you're not one of those people who like spoilers, don't go look at this. But they're doing a really bang up job in my mind on the coverage of what's coming with Forsaken. I'm really excited. I've been really excited to see kind of their different takes of how things are changing, what things are coming, and they're not really they're not approaching it with rose glasses. Like they're being pretty honest about what their thoughts are. I don't agree with some of their thoughts, which is why I'm saying that. But I like the picture that they're painting. They are having a number of. They just released a interview with Steve Cotton and Scott Taylor, and it's an excellent interview. And there's a couple points in it that are not non-spoilery, but needless to say, I'm really excited to see, even from just the storytelling perspective, where the Destiny universe is headed. It feels like it's headed in a good direction. I'm really excited to see where the next destination takes us. So
the Destiny subreddit
is positive.
Even tweeted that out and saying that they've gotten more communication from Bungie in the last few months than they've had pretty much the entire time the game has been out, and it's amazing.
Yeah, the live team, like I said, they're doing incredible things, and it's the team I was looking forward to being invested once they got on board with after the turn of the year, and I wanted to see what they were going to be able to do as time went by. Like Chris Barrett being involved in that, and then having Scott Taylor, Steve Cotton on board now, plus just seeing all of the other ones with Lars Bakken and all of them on there too. Like,
right.
They are all such passionate and amazing people that I don't think that gets talked about enough. Is like what it is that they're doing is awesome to reconnect with everybody again. Definitely big, and I love all the stuff that's coming out of that Game Informer stuff. That's it paints a different picture, I guess, from the Bungie that's being presented to us by certain people on the internet.
Well, yeah, and it's all a matter of perspective as well. So, but yeah, so we're gonna run through a few an outro real quick, and we'll probably stay for a little bit of an after show, as is pretty customary. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to our episode archives can be found at www.focusfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all of our amazing partner podcasts within the Guardian Radio Network over on theguardiansofdestiny.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.